JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from August 23rd, August 26th, 2022, and I'm recording this on February 23rd, 2023. As always, I give you those dates so you know when this information is actually relevant, because the market is always moving and changing, which is what this list kind of shows you. As always, we're looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. We use those two lists to get a feel for what books were hot back then, what factors were making those books hot, what's happened to, and then we're looking at what's happened in the market since, how they responded as that information has got old, or shows have come and gone, or whatever factors have changed related to why people are chasing those books. So we all make better decisions about which books we chase in the moment and which books we're patient on. This week we got 17 books to talk about, and here comes Miss Cat, who's decided she wants to be on camera. First up, we got Conan the Barbarian, number 23, the first appearance of Red Sonja. Back then, raw copies were 150 to 350. 9.8 hit 4,500 with news that once again we had casting for this movie. I feel like we've had that like 6 times that we were getting the Sonja movie, and yeah, it's not happened. But we will see. We got new casting. I don't even remember who they cast this time. But now raw copies are 50 to 300, 9.8, 4,300 is the most recent sale, but that was still way back in September. There's been no recent sales. So overall, it's fairly steady, a bit of an I'll be back, kind of the same range on this book. Probably definitely down a little bit on the 9.8s if you had one sale now, but overall, based on the values that we can see, kind of a steady I'll be back on this one. Next, we have Trespasser number 1 from 2017. It's hit the list because it was optioned, and basically, supposedly there was a director already attached. Back then, it caused raw copies to basically go from 5 to 35, and but there was also a $75 sale in there that was kind of a definite outlier. But most part, it was like 25, 35 kind of sales after the initial kind of bump. Now it's a $10 book, only one sale. $100 for 9.8, again, only one sale. So this one's definitely a trap. If you're paying $25, $35, $75 for this, you definitely should not have. You should have been patient for this one. Next, we have an odd one to make the list. We have Sandman Omnibus Volume 1 from 2013. And this is basically, these were at that time were, I guess, out of print, and the Sandman show was coming out, so people were paying big money for these Omnis. An unwrapped copy was going for $225. A still sealed copy was going for $400 plus. Now it's a $50 to $80 for an unwrapped copy, $80 to $90 for a sealed copy. So this basically became a dumpster fire. I don't know if they reprinted them, but this was still me looking at ones that said 2013. So either way, definitely not going for what it was back then on eBay right now. Next, we're going to move into our covers. Our first cover this week is Batman number 423, the gold foil reprint for Fan Expo Canada. This was big deal back then. People were going crazy for this. People were paying more for this than they were for the original book. 100 to 150 for raw copies. Now it's a 50 to 115 kind of book. 9.8 will still go 2 to 250. That's the unsigned versions. But this definitely still turned into a trap. Yeah, it was crazy that this foil variant was going for more than the original was going for there for a while. Next, we have Detective Comics number 1063. The Yositake Amano 1 and 25. That's probably not how that person pronounces their name, but I apologize. Back then, this 125 was only doing 40 to 50, which is not a good sign because it was barely double ratio. Apparently, this is a Final Fantasy designer, so is why people were chasing this particular cover. Now it's a $20 to $50 book, right in line with what typically happens with a 1 in 25 that barely gets to double. 9.8, still 100, 120, but definitely a down and an I'll be back for this particular book. With that, we have Grimm number 4, the Jenny Frison 1 per store virgin variant. So there is a trade dress version of this cover. It was only this 1 per store, which is usually 1 per stores usually function very close to like a 1 in 25. Back then, it was only going for 25 to 30. Now, there's only been 2 recent sales, a $13 sale, a $20 sale. This is definitely kind of a trap. It's definitely down. There are listings, but it's not really selling for much. Not a lot of interest in this particular cover. Next, we have Evanescence, Echo from the Void, #1, the 1 in 5 video game variant. Back then, this 1 in 5 was going for 15 to 20, which you're thinking that's triple to quadruple ratio. That should be pretty good. And it's still kind of a $3 to $15 book. So a ratio, you're looking at, on average, basically double ratio. But 9.8 sale, $72, but still not a lot of sales, and definitely down from those sales back then, so still another trap. Next, we have Maryville, #1, the Greg Horn variant. Widely panned as one of the worst comics of all time, but this one was hitting the list for I don't know why. People decided they were paying $60+ for this cover. Now they're paying $30 to $50, which is kind of where it had been back long term. Kind of slipped back to kind of where it was at. So definitely another one that's turned into a trap, as most of the sales are on that 30-40 side of things, not the 50 side of things. And yeah, another comic that outside of the covers is not good. Next, we have Spider-Gwen, Gwenverse, #5, the Peach Momoko 1 in 100, with basically a Captain America version of Spider-Gwen. Back then, raw copies were going right at ratio for $100. Now, raw copies are only 50 to 125, with most of the sales coming for under 100, 9.8, 130. I still call this kind of steady. I'll be back because there are just enough sales above the $100 mark to kind of keep it in that steadiest range. But yeah, definitely, and I'll be back. You can definitely find a deal on this if you're willing. All right, with that, we're going to move on to always my favorite thing to make the list and talk about previews #408, which is not why I'm saying that, but because this hit the list because Bad Idea decided to put their whole comic in the previews book. Anyway, which is causing people to buy the previews book, which isn't actually for sale. It's usually just for free, for $25. That seems like a good investment. Now it's a $5 to $10 book. I said dumpster fire, come on man, back then, and I stand by that. It is definitely down in a dumpster fire. I do not understand why people continue to chase these Bad Idea books. They have not been holding value at all. All the gimmicks do is cost some initial sales. I guess if you can flip it, that's great, but otherwise, if you're the one buying, yeah, you have not. None of these Bad Idea books have paid off. Next, we have Black Cat Annual #1, first appearance of the Tiger Division. Back then, that book was going for $15 to $20. 9.8 was going for $99. The cat is mad because she's now stuck in here with me and not outside. And earlier she was mad to be outside right before I started. But anyway, I'll let her out in a second. Now it's a $10 to $25 book, 9.8, 80. So kind of another steady, I'll be back on this one. With that, I will be right back. Okay, the cat has her freedom. I guess she'll be back at the door crying to be back in before I finish, but we will see. We'll see if we can get through the rest of these. Not too many more to go. Next up, we have Star Wars, The High Republic Adventures #8 from Volume 1. The first appearance of Sav Mulligan, who basically we'd found out back then was going to be the focus of the High Adventures series in Phase 2, which she is, and that book is currently coming out. Back then, it jumped up to a $10 book, so that's super high. Now it's a $5 to $15 book. Still, 9.8 only costs you about $45. That's only one sale, though. Yeah, it's been steady, kind of worth it. It's just kind of sitting right there where it was at. There is a little bit of interest here. Most of these High Republic books have backed up a little bit. We'll see. Once we get through all the printing phases, all the book phases, my guess is that's when we'll actually start to see some live action projects related to High Republic. So we're probably still a ways out. Probably a good time to get those if you believe in the High Republic. Next, we have Batman #609, the first appearance of Hush. Back then, raw copies were going for $40. 9.8 was going for $230 based on rumor that Warner Brothers Discovery had signed Matt Reeves to keep doing Batman movies, and there was rumors that Hush might be his next, the next character he would go with as a villain. Now it's a $20 to $40 book, 9.8, 125 to 175. So down and I'll be back, and basically kind of back to where the long-term value on this book has kind of sat for the last couple of years. So yeah, some interest in Hush, but yeah, it's definitely a better time to buy now than when we had those news and announcements. Next, we have Meet the Scrolls, #1, the first appearance of Gila. And this was based on, this is the second week in a row for this book, based on rumors that's who Emilia Clarke was playing. It appears she's not playing that character, but back then, based on the rumors, people were paying $20 to $25 for raw copies. 9.8s were hitting at $170. Now it's a $5 to $15 book. 9.8, $80 to $100. This one definitely turned into a trap. Does not appear. It appears that seems like she's playing Abigail Brand at this point. We will see. We're still a ways out from Secret Wars, but not that far. It'll be here sooner than we think. Next, we have, I said Secret Wars, Secret Invasion. I keep doing that. Next, we have What If, featuring Planet Hulk, #1, the first appearance of Scar. This was all in anticipation of the She-Hulk show. And we were going to get our first appearance of Scar, and we did. Back then, raw copies were going for 100. 9.8 was going 100 plus. 9.8s were going for 1,000. And everybody was all on this. I said back then, dumpster fire, whoever cared about Scar before, or Scar, however you pronounce his name, before he was going to show up in a show. Now it's a $20 to $60 book, 9.8, $230. Yeah, this was a giant dumpster fire. In addition to nobody having cared about the character beforehand, then everybody was mad about the way he appeared. So yeah, this book was not a good investment as it turned out, and would have definitely been worth waiting for. Next, we have Scar, Son of the Hulk, #1, the Julie Bell 1 in 10. His first solo title. Back then it was going for $50. Now it's a $30 to $40 book, but only just a couple of sales of this particular cover of that book. So still kind of turned into a trap, but just barely a trap at these values. But yeah, just not nearly as bad as his first appearance, dropping back, but still the interest is definitely waned in Scar, even though we're probably going to get him again. Next and last, we have Sensational She-Hulk, #1. First issue of her second series, and we knew going in that the show was going to have a lot of her breaking the fourth wall, with this sensational run is what first introduced her doing that and made that a big part of her character. Back then, raw copies were going for 30, 9.8 was hitting 225. Now it's a $15 to $40 book. Still a few sales on that upper end. 9.8, 125 to 225. Overall, I put this as a down and I'll be back. If you wanted to argue maybe steady, I'll be back, you could probably make that argument here. I feel like it's backed up just enough, particularly on the 9.8 side, to be, no, it's down side of I'll be back. The show has come and went. I know some people loved it, some people hated it, but overall, we know we're getting more She-Hulk, and this book is definitely a better time to buy than right before the series. So that is this week's list. A little bit of MCU, several covers, a little bit of comic buzz. A nice mix this week, actually. I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you next time.